So here's a brief outline of my presentation. Firstly, a personal introduction of getting to know me more. Secondly, I will provide a brief context of the Pacific or the Oceania, followed by the Melanesia context. And I will focus briefly on the Pacific Way, the Melanesian Way. Also, I will touch base on two important elements in the Melanesian Way, which are the One Talk system and the Melanesian talk story. Thirdly, I will briefly provide the context of my research study, which was in Sogha, South Malaita, Solomon Islands. Fourthly, I will share some stories of connection and relationships which enabled me to research and collaborate with the community members of Sogha. Fifth, I will share some stories of how I navigated through some of the challenges and tensions that I encountered in my research journey. And then finally, I will end with some concluding thoughts on researching in Melanesia context. So here is the gallery of my family tree. I am the second-born daughter of my parents, who originated from Choiseul and the Western Province of Solomon Islands, and are now retired missionaries. In my early years of upbringing, we moved places a lot throughout Solomon Islands and even to Vanuatu, depending on where my parents were called to serve. My maternal and paternal grandparents were also missionaries throughout Solomon Islands, and I'm also a sister, a niece, an aunt, cousin, granddaughter, and a daughter-in-law. I also love being a mother to my two children and a wife to my one and only husband, who is from Malaita Province. And I think he will join us on Zoom later. I also perceive myself as a woman engaged in these contemporary spaces, as represented in this gallery, a research fellow, early career researcher in Pacific Studies, a mentor to Pacific students, and my Melanesia One Talks. Additionally, I'm a church member of Ponsonby Seventh-day Adventist Church. In societies and villages in Choiseul Province, where my father originated, a significant cultural artifact that every Choiseul woman owns is the kuza bag. And as you can see, the kuza bag is very much similar to the noken bag of West Papua, which is now exhibited in the library. Here, the kuza bag is a string bag made from the bark of the tulip tree. From the past till the present, Choiseul women, they carry this bag everywhere. And there are different storage uses for the kuza bag too, because even though the kuza bag is light, the strings are quite strong and can hold a lot. And as you can see in this photo, kuza bags are mostly worn on the head to support heavy loads. And so personally, in my presentation, the kuza bag is like my cultural representation of my whole being. Each string, which is neatly interwoven, significantly represents my connections and relationships with my genealogy, culture, language, tribe, people, and land. Also, inside the kuza bag are stories of my past, today, and future. So quoting Linda Smith, who said, "The past, our stories, local and global, the present, our communities, cultures, languages, and social practices, all may be spaces of marginalization, but they have also become spaces of resistance and hope." And so today I bring you my kuza bag of stories and experiences of my fieldwork in Sogha. Perhaps some of the stories will make you laugh or surprise you or maybe inspire you, but I hope that my stories will continue to contribute meaningfully to Pacific research, especially in the Melanesian context. I have titled my presentation as Talem that Yublo Olketa, fieldwork research experience in Solomon Islands. So translating Talem that Yublo Olketa from Solomon Islands Pidgin to English simply mean tell them that you belong to them. So in context, my presentation will be based on the importance of relationality, relationships, connections, collaboration, reciprocity, and sense of belonging, which all these are crucial in my fieldwork research approach and engagement with the community members of SAA. Guided by this powerful quote and philosophy that Oceania is vast, it's huge, covering 1/3 of the globe's surface. As you all know, Oceania is linguistically diverse and complex, with 1/4 of the world's spoken languages across the islands. Oceania is also culturally and uniquely diverse and is home to the Polynesian peoples in the Central and Southern Pacific, the Micronesian peoples in the Northern Western Pacific, and the Melanesian peoples in the Western Pacific. And across the 12 countries in Oceania and thousands and 10,000s of islands and atolls lie communities and villages along coastal areas and mountainous areas, mostly governed by decolonial aspirations and cultural and spiritual values and practices of the Pacific Way. According to Crocombe in his 1975 work, The Pacific Way, coined by Ratuse Kamesese Mara, acknowledges diversity, common themes across and within cultures, and the obligation for Pacific people to actively shape their future to the fullest. And in essence, since time immemorial, Pacific communities, villages, and people's way of life and lived experiences are deeply entrenched in their indigenous knowledge systems, local customs, relationships, languages, and cultural and spiritual values and practices, which inform and shape the perspectives, understanding, and knowledge on matters that are relevant to them. These are the strengths and resilience of Pacific communities, which generation after generation they built on, despite the many socio-economic and environmental challenges they encounter every day. Moving on, I want to focus on Melanesia, which is the most culturally and linguistically diverse region in the Pacific, with 1,300 plus languages. Melanesia stretches from Papua New Guinea in the southwestern Pacific Ocean to the Solomon Islands, Vanuatu, New Caledonia, and eastward to Fiji. And as mentioned by a Solomon Islands scholar, Kaputaulaka, the term Melanesia, it refers to the black-skinned people or Black Islands, which reflected the race discourses in Europe, where the Black people were placed at the bottom of the racial hierarchy. However, Melanesians, they have embraced and valued the term Melanesia for self-identification and empowerment to create opportunities and alternatives despite the negative representations of Melanesia in scholarly discourses. Again, quoting the Kaputaulaka, he says, and I quote, "Melanesians have complex experiences and cultures that are rooted in centuries of traditions, while at the same time adapting to new and dynamic futures that draw from within Melanesia and beyond." Melanesians, like other Pacific peoples, they have this obligation to develop their strengths, their qualities, and virtues as Melanesians through their shared and lived experiences and ongoing conversations and talk story. And so one significant development amongst others within the Melanesia region is the Melanesian Way. Narokobi, he's a Papua New Guinean scholar, was one of the first Pacific scholars to write about the Melanesian way, which he was often asked to define, and his first response would be, by the actions or omissions, you will know. This is also echoed by Stephanie Lawson in his 2013 work titled Melanesia, as our Melanesianness is displayed in our attitudes, orientations toward our lived experiences, as well as political practices and institutions. Quoting Gregory Bablis in his 2010 work titled A Melanesian Icon, Professor Narokobi, he said, Melanesia Way is not a recession into the past. It is the integration of the past with the present to benefit our future. And so the Melanesian Way, it was a call made by Narokobi to Papua New Guineans to create their unique roadmap of development by integrating PNG customs and practices with Western practices. Foreseeing and experiencing the dangers of Westernization, he appealed to Papua New Guineans to adopt only the good aspects from the Western practices into their continuing traditions. And it is a call for the true Melanesian way. Another important development that reinforces Melanesia or the Melanesian way is the concept of the Wantok system. The Wantok system, correct me if I'm wrong, but maybe similar to Far Samoa, that's the Samoan way, and Kerryn, the Fijian way, which is tightly bound to the notions of indigenous identity, calling for collective cooperation and relationships amongst people who speak the same language. And so this term, it was coined in the 1800s to express connections amongst the indigenous plantation laborers who came with diverse linguistic backgrounds and worked together on coconut and other plantations. And so this term, Wantok, it became a focal point of identifying and connecting Melanesians who shared a linguistic similarity, which is the development of Melanesia Pidgin. Like in Papua New Guinea, it's Tokpisin, for Solomon Islands, Pidgin, and for Vanuatu, it's Pislama, and with a common origin, Melanesia. So in simple terms, Wantok, it can be translated to one talk or one language. According to Gordon Now, Wantok is a term used to express patterns of relationships and networks that link people in families and regional localities, and it is also a reference to provincial, national, and sub-regional identities. And Rizio, another scholar, refers to Wantok system as the set of relationships between individuals characterized by common language, the use of a common language, common kinship group, common geographical area of origin, common social associations or religious groups, and having common belief in the principle of mutual reciprocity. Furthermore, the Wantok system is a flexible embodiment of a firm tenet of Melanesian life, that is collective responsibility and support, connections and relationships. All these are principles and values entranced in the Wantok system and are constantly reinvented or reorganized to fit the various contexts that Melanesians they experience. Also, the term Wantok is used to describe various relationships of mutual obligation and support between near and distant kin and those sharing other types of social and geographical associations. Sharing and caring, they are also fundamental values within Melanesian society. As Narokobi states, cooperation and mutual support, especially in times of need and crisis, are important of our living experience. And so all these values, they underpin the notion of Wantok system, which is a way of binding strong relationships with tribes, clans, and families. Wantok system also Wantok system is also becoming meaningful and applicable beyond village life and has infiltrated into urban centers and multi-ethnic contexts. Finally, in the Melanesia context, the Wantok system is giving preference to kin in the expectation of a series of reciprocal obligations being filled, and relationality is central, and language as talk or as medium is a key element in indicating the kinds of relatedness experienced and obligation due. So thus, being a Wantok true talk story, according to Kabini Sangha and his fellow scholars in the 2018 work, is the creation of a negotiated understanding of the world. Another important element in the Wantok system is custom, which refers to the social norms and practices that embody the local approaches and everyday life and experiences in Melanesia communities and villages. In other words, customs refers to a set of practices, themes, and ideas that identify Melanesians, belong to Melanesians, or are practiced and held by Melanesians for peaceful coexistence, conflict resolutions, stability, and order amongst Melanesians. And this brings us to another important development in the Melanesian context, which is talk story. Contextually, talk story simply means two or more people engaging in a conversation, interchangeably talking or storing matters of importance to them. According to Sangha and his fellow scholars, talk story across the Melanesia region has a common ground. Where talk story is an integral element in Melanesia, talk story connects the linguistic diversity in Melanesia. Talk story provides space for reflecting on issues. Talk story is a culturally accepted way of sharing information, and talk story is a traditional oral mode of the Melanesian way of discussion. And so against the above background, that talk story is also influenced by Christian values and practices central to societies in Melanesia, making it a blended process that reinforces trust building and neutrality. Thus, in Pacific research, talk story is similar to Talanoa. However, talk story identifies Melanesians, and through the practice of talk story amongst Wantoks, a space is provided for relationships and connections to be identified and developed, and also for trust to be developed. Building a trusting relationship is important to understanding Melanesian people and the processes they use. And so relationality, according to Sangha and his fellow scholars, is at the heart of story. Okay, so coming to my study now, a brief background about my PhD project, which was titled Examining the Vernacular Languages and English in Education Policy and Practices, Language Attitudes and Perspectives towards Sa'a Language, Pidgin and English in Sa'a Indigenous Community in Solomon Islands. So that was my title, and just very briefly, a background of the project. In Solomon Islands, we have between 60 to 70 languages spoken, and Pidgin, that's the common one that is widely used throughout our 9 provinces. When we gained our independence in 1978, English was mandated as the medium of instruction. And so the policy at that time was focused on English and did not acknowledge Pidgin or our indigenous languages. However, that English-only policy is impractical and it's difficult to provide in most classroom situations. Even though the policy expected teachers to use English only as medium of instruction and for students to master reading and writing in English, the reality is that most Solomon Islanders, including teachers and students, they lack fluency and confidence to use English. English is a language that Solomon Islanders, they do not speak daily. And a study done in 2021 found that English-only education is particularly devastating for rural children who are already disadvantaged in the Solomon Islands education system. And so with that background, in 2019, our Ministry of Education came up with a policy, which is the Vernacular Languages and English in Education policy, and implemented this policy in 2 language communities. One in Sogha, where I did my fieldwork, and another in Malaita Province. But the outcome of the implementation and the language attitudes and perspectives towards the use of Sogha or the Arosi language, Pidgin and English had not been studied. And so after teaching English as the second language at secondary level for almost 10 years in various schools throughout Solomon Islands, I started to question myself. Like I said, I asked, how can teachers, parents, and communities help their students to learn English effectively without the loss of their vernacular languages and cultural knowledge, practices, and values? And so in 2019, when I was offered the opportunity to undertake my PhD in Pacific Studies here, I chose to examine how the language attitudes and perspectives of community members toward the use of their Sogha language, Pidgin, and English in formal or non-formal learning contexts, as well as wider contextual factors influenced those contextual factors influenced the implementation of the vernacular policy. So I drew on talk story interviews, group talk story observations, and fieldworks with teachers, parents, caregivers, village elders, and students of Sogha to gather their stories and experiences regarding the implementation of the policy. So that's the community I did my study with. It's Sogha. It is a village located along the east coast of South Malaita. And the map shows the location. Their language, which is also called Sogha, has the same name as their village, which means that the Sogha language originated from Sogha village before spreading to their neighboring villages. Their school is named Charles Eliot Fox Primary School, which is named after an Anglican missionary, historian, and anthropologist who first visited Solomon Islands in 1911. And he was greatly respected by those in the Melanesia mission for his understanding of Melanesia cultures and also his writings. And so Sogha has a long history with the Anglican Church. The first Anglican mission on Malaita, it was established in Sogha village. And ever since the arrival of Christianity, church activities and lotu, they have remained an integral part of the lives of Sogha people. The population is about 800 to 1,000 plus, including families living in Honiara. Storytelling, it has been a powerful mechanism in the lives of Pacific people for passing on indigenous knowledge, custom, oral traditions, genealogies, etc., from one generation to the next. Through storytelling, Pacific people, they learn to survive and live in peace, harmony, and obedience with nature and with one another. Such relationships through storytelling foster a sense of identity and belonging and ensure their cultural heritage is not lost or forgotten. And also, storytelling is an important pedagogy in the call to decolonize specific research and methodologies. It provides comfortable and safe spaces for Pacific scholars to hold dialogue conversations about what matters the most to them. So through storytelling, I will now share with you some of the stories of my fieldwork experiences. Firstly, how I established the first connections and networks. So during my first year, that was in 2019, after working closely with my supervisors on determining the focus of my PhD project, and given that I have never been to Sogha or to Malaita Province, even though I'm married there, I realized that I needed to start establishing connections and networks with those who share the same research interest as mine, and most importantly, with the community with whom I would be conducting my field work with. And so in October of that year, I returned to Solomon Islands to present a paper at the Leadership Pacific Solomon Islands Conference. And during the conference, I had the opportunity to meet Reverend Dr. Ben Wate. And he came from Sogha village. He's also a well-respected leader in his community. And he was quite excited when I told him of my research interest. And so he became my key contact from Sogha as I was preparing for my field work. He even connected me to the headmistress of the primary school. He also arranged my accommodation and informed his family members living in the village of my plan to visit Sogha. So for me, having a primary contact from Sogha, it was crucial for me to start building connections and relationships with the members of that community. Secondly, reaffirming existing relationships. So in early 2021, which was supposed to be the start of my third year, I had yet to conduct my fieldwork due to the COVID-19 pandemic. So I sought permission from my supervisors to return to Solomon Islands, contemplating whether to withdraw from my study. But when I arrived, I realized that there was no outbreak of COVID-19. And so with the support of my supervisors and family, I decided to conduct my fieldwork from late March to June in 2021. On the evening prior to my departure for South Malaita, my father-in-law came to our home, and he wanted to ensure that I was adequately prepared for my journey to South Malaita the following day. So when he came, I expressed to him my anxiety, my nervousness. As I told him, I said, I've never been to Malaita, and I also had some assumptions and stories with me. So I asked him, I said, Uncle, when I go to Sogha, how would I relate to the community members? Like, where do I start and how do I navigate this process? Very calmly, he said, oh, when you introduce yourself to the village and the people, you tell them that you are their daughter because your grandparents and even your mother, they served as missionaries throughout Malaita many years ago. Also, you need to mention that you are married to one of their sons from Malaita. This should be your first step towards connecting with the village and the community. And so this advice from my father-in-law, it was very important to help me understand and negotiate my positionalities and identities, as well as establishing new relationships and connections with the people of Sogha. It also enabled me to build trust and respect for the community, its people, and their cultural knowledge, values, practices, and their language. So I recall on my first arrival in Sogha, when I introduced myself, the first question they asked was about my husband's village. So when I replied that he was from Walande, and Walande is also located in South Malaita, but they speak a different language, the village, they responded positively by saying, oh, we are closely related to the people from Walande, because one of our important women in the past, she was married to a chief from Walande to restore peace between the two villages. So you are not a stranger to us. You're one of us. And so their account of their history enabled me to connect with their genealogy and the shared narrative of the village. And that was also crucial to my fieldwork research in Sogha. Thirdly, research collaboration with community members. So in the village, in Sogha village, my primary contact was late Madam Alice, who was the headmistress of the school, and she was very deeply passionate about teaching the vernacular language, both as a subject as well as a medium of instruction. And so she was very excited about my project. So Alice and her teachers, they organized a welcome ceremony for me. I didn't expect this, and I was quite emotional as well during the ceremony. Alice, together with her teachers, they also invited other community members who were interested in participating in the study to meet with me during that time. Also, Alice, she chose a young female member of the community to help me as like my village research assistant. And this assistant, she played a crucial role in introducing me to the village chiefs and other community members, as well as ensuring that my meetings with them were organized. Furthermore, she was also my translator, facilitating communication from Sogha to Pidgin, especially for those who are non-Pidgin speakers. Fourthly, engaging with community members in village spaces. So there were many good engaging moments with the members of the Sogha community, during which I found myself negotiating my positionalities. My first participation in a village event was the Easter celebration. And so on Sunday morning, we had church service followed by games and then a feast in the afternoon. I also, during that time, I contributed financially by covering the registration fee for one of the soccer teams that had already been eliminated from the competition, but they were still eager to compete. And so they were very grateful to be back on the field. And so in this village, as I mentioned earlier, the church and its related activities, they hold significant importance. Thus, as a researcher, I felt I needed to show the same level of respect for the beliefs and faith and attend church services on Sundays with them. And it was also for my spiritual enrichment. And I recall about a month after my arrival, a woman from the village, she came and asked me, she said, "Oh, are you an Anglican?" And when I replied no, she seemed like taken back and responded, "Oh, we all assumed that you were an Anglican because you consistently attend church with us." Another meaningful experience I was invited to participate in was a ceremony organized by the young members of the Sogha community to express their appreciation to their mothers, both young and old. The event was quite touching, as those who had lost their mothers or wives or sisters, they were allowed to reflect on the wonderful lives their loved ones had led and the joy they brought to their existence. There were many tears shed, which no one, attempted to wipe away, as they found comfort, peace, and hope through their tears. And so in this community, the crucial roles of women are highly recognized and respected. And I must also hold the same recognition and respect for the women. Another memorable experience that I had occurred not on land, but out in the open sea. Bonito fish or skipjack tuna, they hold cultural significance for the Sa'a people. Historically, as well as in the present day, bonito is the primary meat served at feasts. And so in the past, it was the chief who assigned tasks and responsibilities to community members when the bonito season arrived, that is from March to April, with the winds from the north. And so there were specific rituals for young men to perform before, during, and after the bonito fishing process. And so being part of a fishing trip with the young men of the village, it was a good learning experience for me. The second photo, that's a taro garden. It also carries cultural importance for the Sa'a community. Traditionally, taro must be consumed with bonito at any village feast. Although this custom has become less strict over time, in the past, if the chief summoned a feast and instructed women to prepare only bonito and taro, any women who defied this order by bringing yam, pana, or cassava would be required by the chief to pay compensation for her disobedience. And so during my time in Sa'a, I often accompanied the village women to their gardens up in the hills as they emphasized that every Sa'a woman should maintain a taro garden. And so by engaging in garden activities with these women provided me with another valuable opportunity to learn about their gardening practices and the important cultural values that they still observe to ensure bountiful harvest. Additionally, spending time with the village children was a truly delightful experience for me. Whenever I wanted to interact with them after their classes, I would always find them at the river. And one could easily acquire the Sa'a language by interacting with the children. And so engaging with community members in their daily activities, it was essential during my field work for fostering lasting friendships, respect, and trust among the people. I also look forward to sharing meals with families in the village, sitting inside the kitchen with the women while they prepare food, and then sitting together, sharing meals. I did learn a lot about various topics, subjects, village gossips that are important to their lives. Of course, we crack jokes and have laughs together. When I first arrived in Sa'a, I also learned that chewing betel nut is also very important to them. When betel nut chewers, when they chew, they can talk on and on. I'm not a betel nut chewer, but then I saw its importance. And so every morning, the village boys, they would bring me betel nuts, which I paid for. And whenever I leave the house that I was accommodated in, I ensured that I had betel nuts in my bag, so that whenever I meet a villager, I stop and share betel nuts with them. And it is reciprocity as well. They offer me food whenever I visit their homes, and in return, I provide them betel nuts. During the first month of my time in Sa'a, as I've mentioned that I'm an Adventist, and so every Saturday I decide to rest in my room, reading my Bible and prayer, because there was no Adventist church close by. However, I felt that something was lacking, something was missing by me staying in the room on Saturdays. And so I prayed about this, and I sensed the need to use my Saturdays to visit the very elderly community members. And so I reached out to my research assistant for advice. I also wrote a letter to the chief priest, informing him of my interest to visit the old people in the village, share a Bible story, and then pray with them. The priest responded positively, saying that the elderly, they would be very happy to welcome me into their homes. And so with the assistance of my research assistant, she compiled a list of 21 elderly men and women in the village. And so during the second and third month of my fieldwork, my Saturdays were devoted to visiting the elderly. My research assistant, she also accompanied me because not all of them, they are Pidgin speakers. I shared a Bible story about Jesus calming the storm on the Sea of Galilee, and I emphasized the lesson that regardless of their circumstances, be it loneliness, illness, or other challenges, they could take comfort in the Savior who has the power to calm their fears and loneliness. And so I felt that this message, it carried hope, peace, and comfort, which I convey in every home that I visited. Additionally, I also gifted each home with soap. And I recall one elderly man, after I gave him the soap, he stood up and he hugged me very tightly. And then in tears, he said, "Oh, I haven't used soap for the past 3 months." And so this opportunity to step out of my comfort zone and connect with the village elders, like to hold hands, sit with them, pray with them, and lighten some of their burdens, that was a profound blessing, not just for me, but also for these elderly community members, which I perceive as reciprocity of blessings. During my time, there was also another young, innocent girl who was gravely sick, and so the doctors, they had to send her back to the village. And the practice within the community for a family whose member is sick is for them to come together to provide food and support during the difficult time. So I also spent some time in that home, just sleeping on the floor, even though the main language used at the time was the Sa'a, and I didn't say much, but I could feel that my presence offered some comfort to the family. Death ceremony is also a time where community members, they come together. And during the time I was there was a death of a young mother. And I accompanied the village women to visit the home. And I remembered when it was the turn of, the Sa'a village, because the death was in a neighboring village. So I remember when we entered the home, I was at the end of the line, and when it was my turn to meet one of the sons, I went to him and I said, "Look, your mother must be a very good, kind, and respected woman. I don't know your mother, but I can tell that she must be a very good person." And I passed him an envelope with money. And I remember he held my hand tightly, and just in silence, no words spoken from him, but I felt that he appreciated me being there to share the loss of his family. So it was a week of mourning. And then at the end of the mourning period, food was shared, and people, they came and we sat and ate. On the night after the last ceremony, the cries, the speeches, the rituals, the shared food, like all these were, I was reflecting on all that happened during that week. And so in my journal, I recorded the following, which I'm not, due to time, I'm not going to read through here, but it tells me that for them, like for the people of Sa'a and for that community, yeah, from birth to death, like life is supposed to be shared, yeah. You share, I share, we share. They see themselves like death. It unites them as one people, one tribe, one village. They were born, together they were born, and together they share death. Okay, so moving on to some of the challenges. Yes, so what I've just discussed were some of the ways that I engaged with the community members that enabled me to conduct my fieldwork. Yeah? So research to me is more than just an academic activity, that our research, it should go beyond interview questions to one that is transforming relational and one that deepens relationships and connections. I will share two amongst other challenges that I've encountered and navigated through in my fieldwork. The first one is fear of not being able to connect with the community. And I expressed that prior to my arrival in Sogha. I expressed this to my father-in-law. But not only that, on the second day of my arrival, I planned to attend church with my research assistant. And then a village elder came, and then he greeted me. And then he said, "Oh, I heard that you are a student from New Zealand, and you came to our village to do your research." So I said, yeah, that's right. And I want to sound very simple and very humble as well. And the village elder went on and he said, "Oh, so when I heard that you were coming, I said to myself, oh, another academic coming into our village." Yeah, he said academic. He didn't say researcher, he said academic. And then after having said that, he left. So, it was just my second day and, I was very confused. I was stunned. And so that night when I went to bed, I was quite restless. And so I took my journal and then I wrote something down. I said, I wish I understood what he meant by that statement. Did he want to sound sarcastic? Was he genuine? Who were those first academics to Sogha that he may be referring to? What were they like? What did he think of? Did he like their research? Does he like academics or not? So these are some of the questions. Yeah, but I am reminded that in my conversations and interactions with them, it is important for me to always acknowledge them as knowledge holders of their rich history, their cultural practices, values, languages, and stories of their past, present, and future. Another challenge that I faced was the necessity to negotiate my positionalities, and always I remind myself to respect the community, respect the people, and to respect what they hold in their heart, what they hold dearly in their hearts, and that my research should be in their best interest. Also, finding common grounds in context, cultural values, practices, as well as spiritual connections, narratives, all this, they helped me to navigate the challenge. Also embracing the important principle of being one talks to them, related, connected to them, and also using talk story as a methodology and method. They were all important in my approach. And also my note-taking, journaling is one of my research techniques that offered me opportunity to self-examine, self-assess my thoughts, feelings, and reflection on my daily experiences with the community. Just the last story to share with you. So I was with this village elder, and I wanted to learn about one of the cultural practices, which is known as Lainiwala. So Lainiwala, it means men's cry. So this practice, it involves speeches delivered by the village orator during mourning period, following the loss of a community member. So as he was sharing about, this practice, Lainiwala, at the end, he said, "Oh, my girl, from now onward, I want you to stop giving betel nut to the villagers." So, I did not expect this. And then he gave me two reasons. He said that since that I do not chew betel nuts, there was no reason for me to give them to others. And he also emphasized the importance of me to remain steadfast in my Christian faith, because in my faith, we don't chew betel nut. His second reason was that I was just wasting my money by purchasing betel nuts for others. And he said that I should refrain from spending my money on the village boys. So it took me some good seconds to process what he told me. And, I felt, okay, there's no need for me to justify my actions, but instead I humbly apologized to him and respectfully thanked him for his fatherly advice. And then I made tea for us, we had biscuits, and then he left. But that experience made me realize the importance of continuous self-awareness, continuous self-examination of my positionalities, navigating through my positionalities. It needs to be done ethically and culturally. And this is still an ongoing journey for me. And so reflecting on my fieldwork research in Sa'a, I felt a deep sense of gratitude. The Sa'a community, they embraced a holistic way of life, despite the challenges that they encountered. The people, they remain resilient. They remain in unity, cooperation. And I would also conclude that, like other communities in Solomon Islands, Sa'a relies on three important institutions, and that is the custom, Lotu, and our government. For the government, it is represented by the primary school, our village leaders, our provincial government members, even the member of parliament. So for researchers entering an Indigenous community in the Solomon Islands, it is crucial to approach our work with respect for and recognition of the significant roles that these institutions, they play within the villages as they reflect what truly matters to the hearts and lives of the people. In conclusion, I just want to emphasize gifting, where in Sa'a, it's a term, it's a concept of apuniapu, which means no blood for blood, and that everyone who enters Sa'a is an adopted community member in the village. And so through the gifting, I experienced their acceptance of me within the community, the ceremony that they had for me, and the act of reciprocal gifting, it solidified a lifelong connection and relationship with the people of Sa'a. And so bringing together the advice that my father-in-law gave me before my departure, where he said, Talem that you Olketa, tell them that you belong to them, as well as what they told me during the farewell ceremony, where they say that I not only belong to my province, but I also belong to Sa'a. Both of these, they emphasize the importance of relationality, fostering positive relationships, collaboration with community members, reciprocity, obligations, and feeling a sense of belonging, which all these were vital to my fieldwork experience. And this also underscores the importance of negotiating and renegotiating my positionalities within the various village contexts and spaces. And so when I left Sa'a, I had transitioned from merely being a researcher to becoming one of their own. And that is a lifetime gift that my family and I will always hold dearly in our hearts. So that is my Kuza bag of stories. And I will continue to build on these important values of relationships, collaboration, reciprocity, obligations, and sense of belongingness in our Pacific research for our children and our Pacific generations, so that they too can carry their own Kuza bags confidently into the future. And so in closing, I would just say, like with Linda Smith, that Indigenous research is a humble and humbling activity indeed. Kohi, tagetumas, tenakoto, and thank you everyone for your time and presence.